I mean, I thought Glenn Close was pretty believable. Like, and they cast and makeup was on point. Like looking at pictures of his mom and his grandma, or like at the end they had that family video roll or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they fucking nailed his mom and grandma as far as like appearance. Still real pissed there wasn't a Tweety Bird sweater in there somewhere. You cannot tell me that in
It might have
fucking
been like a it might have been like a copyright thing.
yeah. There would have been a Tasmanian devil fucking coffee mug or a Tweety Bird sweatshirt somewhere in a home in the 90s in rural Ohio. You can't tell me that shit wasn't everywhere.
This is Hoot and Holler, podcast about the Ozarks.
The end.
Yeah, Hillbilly Elegy. So the first line of that movie was, what was it? It was where are you going, boy? To the swimming hole. Don't get bit by cottonmouth.
Do they even have cottonmouths up that far into Kentucky? Like Ohio?
Yeah, I mean that section was in Kentucky, and I think maybe I don't really know. Also, that is like the only scene that happens in Kentucky. The rest of the movie happens in fucking Ohio or in New Haven. Like, I mean, I don't know where Middletown, Ohio is. I think it's probably in Appalachian, Ohio. It's just funny that the whole thing is about like his hillbilly Kentucky family, and you only get 25 seconds or whatever at the beginning of the movie, where his grandpa and cousins almost beat the shit out of some little boys for trying to drown him in the water or whatever to set the scene for a setting that the movie doesn't even take place in.
All I know is I was rooting for those boys that were trying to drown JD.
I don't know why I didn't look this up the other night when we were watching it, but I just looked up the screenwriter. Her name's Vanessa Taylor. She's from Boulder, Colorado. She also wrote Divergent.
Hey, that's hill country.
That's true. They do have hills.
They do have hills in Boulder. I seen them.
Man, yeah, that movie, oh god. It was, and like, okay, I don't know, this is something we've all said, but just our feelings for J.D. Vance just aside, it was not a good movie. Amy Adams' acting in that movie was so bad, and I hate to say that because I do love her, but that scene where, and I was laughing about this later, where if anybody here is listening, a spoiler alert for Hillbilly Elegy, but in that scene where they break into the house and find his papa dead, and Mama's like, "Is he okay?" And she's like, "No, he's dead." She's like, "How do you know?" "I'm a nurse."
I'm a nurse.
I don't know why, but I've literally not been able to stop laughing about that since, was it Friday night?
I keep thinking about the scene where she's just like high on pills, roller skating around the the hospital wing.
Well, it's funny. I mean, that ties into what's so wrong about that movie, right? Like, whenever the hospital's trying to kick her out because she's uninsured, like she relapsed. JD drove back from his interview week with Yale Law School or whatever to come home and deal with his relapsed mama.
Where he has to decide which forks to use. That's basically you're getting the job if you know how to eat a salad.
Yeah. He sees too many forks and spoons and has to run on back to Ohio because it freaks him out.
He does have to run into the hallway and make a phone call.
It's like, yeah, it's like immediate. It's like a perfect, I don't know. That's just like so much. We all tell stories and you have to make the story sound good or whatever, but it's way too convenient there. But when he's in the hospital, he yells at the doctor, like, how can you guys do this? She worked at this hospital for years. Hell, she probably started getting hooked on pills while she was here, which later is more or less confirmed with the taking pills and roller skating around shit. But he almost gets to it, right? Like, he almost gets to the problem of it being like the opioid crisis being a systemic thing. Being a result of the healthcare system and of capitalism. He almost gets to that. But then at the end of the movie, he goes to work for a law firm, and then in real life, shortly after that, becomes a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, who did PR plant work for Purdue Pharma, who created OxyContin and is responsible largely, more than any other company, for spreading, for pushing Oxy so hard, which is at the heart of the opioid epidemic. And it's just so funny that he like almost gets the point, but then goes to work for the same fucking people that did this thing to his mom, and then he stands there and moralizes about personal responsibility and shit.
Right.
Yeah, it was
fucking hack.
I know, just in that movie, just this guy just being so close to getting the point. I like I said, it was basically that meme of Bradley Whitford just not understanding Parasite at all, just for 2 hours. It was,
and I mean, he looks around him and sees so much brokenness and poverty, and sees his own shortcomings, and doesn't think like, oh, is this societal? Is this systemic? Is this a result of the economic and political system that has created these conditions? Nah. Everybody's just fucking lazy and stupid.
Right.
It's not everybody else's fault, except for me.
Right. I'm the one who overcame my tough upbringing in Ohio, and no one else could do it, and they could have done it like me. He's doing a Horatio Alger story, and he wrote himself as the hero.
Yeah, it's Horatio Alger's. It's Harry Potter. It's it's, I don't know. It's just like every fucking coming of age middling person rises above the fray bullshit origin story, except this one's set in Ohio and Kentucky instead of, Privet Drive or whatever.
But they are both written by transphobes. I'm confident.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You're a wizard, JD.
I do love that this is the book and movie, at this point, that so many like white liberals want to hold, and they're like, oh, it's just like this like helps them sleep better at night as they're writing off an entire section of the country. They're like, well, there are some good ones like J.D. Vance. Yes, he is a Republican, but the rest of them, it's just it's just not their fault. I'm just like, why?
Go ahead.
No, yeah, it's just, I'm just like, why is this guy your liaison to rural working class folks? Like, JD Vance is a shithead. Like, what?
Because he's respectable, because he's a Yaley, because he works for a think tank, you know what I mean? Like, those are all things that give you some sort of like moral standing in this country, despite them really not meaning jack shit. And it furthers that thing where like you can write off this whole section of the country because all the good ones left, like JD, you know what I mean? Like,
they all left. They learned which forks to use.
There are a few good people, but they all fucking leave. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Oh God. And yeah, I said earlier, I have had people in my DMs on Instagram and Facebook literally since Friday night trying to fight me over this movie. And I'm like, man, not only is J.D. Vance a shithead, but also this movie was terrible. And unfortunately, like, are they having the Oscars this year? Like, does it
They are, yeah.
Oh, great. I can't wait for this. It's just this and, is it Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey? Which that was actually not a terrible movie. But
it was much better than this. I preferred it.
Yeah. They're just going to fucking clean up.
I honestly, based on the reviews for this movie, I don't think it will get, like, Oscar nominations because the reviews were awful. Although the conservative people that I've seen talking about it are saying, well, they just don't like it because they don't like J.D. Vance. No, it's just a bad movie.
Yeah, I know. I love it that, I think it was Ted Cruz was like, and a bunch of other just, right-wing, talking heads have said, oh, the only reason people are talking bad about this movie is because the left have said that they're not allowed to like it. I'm like, what?
Who made this movie?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
If there's a Hollywood liberal elite, it's
Right,
Ron
exactly.
Howard. I mean,
They all took a break from being on the Epstein Island and came back to make this movie.
That's why they couldn't get Tom Hanks, because he's still in Greece, because he can't leave.
I mean, it comes at an important cultural moment and political moment because, like you mentioned, Ted Cruz, and Ted Cruz is one of these, the cadre of these Republican senators and thought leaders who are trying to rebrand the Republican Party as the party of the working class. And of course, it's utter bullshit, right? Like, they don't. You look at any of these guys' policies from Hawley to Cruz, you look at them, tax, trade, labor strength, like unionizing rules. They're always, 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 always against the working class. But they at least are throwing out the breadcrumbs, right? Like, they're
right.
at least talking about the working class and working class grievance, especially like white working class grievance. They're trying to permanently capture that block. Go ahead, Josh.
When someone like Ted Cruz talks about the working class, he absolutely means the white working class.
Oh yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
That is who they are talking about when they're doing this.
Same with Hawley. Yeah, I mean, they don't. Well, I mean, it's interesting because Billy Long spent his weekly newsletter update that I think you shared the title of as a segue for McNaughton or whatever, because he's talking about the new Norman Rockwell, and he was talking about how diverse the freshman class of Republican House members is, which is a pretty fucking low bar, but it is fairly diverse. Most of the new Republican House members are women.
Real women.
It's more
vote
ethnically,
for Trump.
and they do. I mean, Trump gained votes across every single demographic but white men since 2016. Every single demographic. White women, black men, black women, all economic incomes, all of his vote share increased in all of those except for white men, which is presumably like the Lincoln Party ghouls, jumping ship whenever Trumpers tend to be, upper middle class or just straight up rich white guys.
Who do you think JD voted for?
Who do you think JD voted for?
I think he went Trump to Biden. I think he voted for Trump last time, and this time he voted for Biden.
I'd buy that. I think a lot of those. He seems like
that's
kind of like a never Trumper-ish.
Right.
Like he fits in with those dudes. It seems like
he might have been
he is
Mitt Romney in Road and His Wife.
He's a self-described nationalist. I mean, just recently,
cool.
Just a week or two ago, he tweeted about declining birth rates.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
The tweet started as a nationalist, and it's just like, holy shit. And this comes back to like fucking Matt Iglesias, the former Vox co-founder. I don't think anybody in the real world knows who Matt Iglesias is or gives a flying fuck about him, but he's one of those like Twitter character guys, and he's pretty respected within media circles as like a powerful centrist thinker or whatever. And
a guy who was really into the Iraq War for a long time.
Yeah. He was a big Iraq War booster.
Which proves you're serious. It proves you're serious if you were a liberal who supported the Iraq War.
Yeah, you're one of the big kids, right? You're the grown-up in the room. But his latest idea that he's pushing is 1 billion Americans.
1 billion.
China.
He went on Glenn Beck to talk about it, and they agreed.
He went on
Glenn
Glenn
Beck, 1 billion
Beck,
Americans.
He went on Shapiro. He went on Tucker, I think, even. Like, he went on, like, every... And it's just like, boy, I can't imagine a worse fucking pitch is a quote unquote like someone who cares about liberal social values or anything, than taking a nationalist idea like tripling the fucking body count in this country in order just to beat China economically, taking that to the right as some kind of like thing that we like go arm in arm in, as if that isn't like the seed of a deeply fascist fucking ideology, you know. And that's the same thing that
Jesus
JD Vance said,
Christ.
is like he's worried about declining birth rates. It's like, it's just fucking laundered white replacement theory, you know? Like, it's just a laundered,
Who else?
white
Who else talks?
genocide.
Who else talks about birth rates all the time? Commenters on Stormfront. You know, that's who's worried about the white birth rate.
Fucking Tom Robb down putting up billboards in Harrison, Arkansas that say diversity is just a code word for white genocide. I mean, you're one step away from that shit. Like when you start talking about 1 billion Americans or fretting over lowered birth rates. And the funniest thing about that fucking birth rates tweet was that it was tied to daylight savings time. He was complaining about like nobody's gonna fuck because it's dark too early now. When it's like,
no, your wife is making excuses, JD. She does not want to fuck.
I mean, people create babies in the winter. Like, that's always been. You don't have shit to do. You can only.
There's
work
nothing else to
outside
do.
for like
Exactly.
8 hours. Historically, it gets cold
JD, it's
and it
cuffing
gets dark,
season.
and
It's cuffing season, JD.
you go inside, you start a fire, and you get freaky all winter long. That's just the way that humans work. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Oh,
That's
God damn it, JD.
That's probably.
I want to
enough,
write a
JD
book.
Vance. I'm gonna have a fucking aneurysm.
I want to write a book called 100,000 Americans, which is about all I think we need, and I want to hand it to 100,000, or 144,000 actually is what I want.
And we can all
I was
go to
gonna
heaven.
Yeah.
Well, don't worry. We're likely headed on that track anyways if we hit a mass biodiversity collapse. But
I think that we need more people here, so when climate change finally ends the world, we all go down together. So I honestly think we should have 1 billion people. It sounds like a great plan, honestly.
yeah, it's accelerationism, but not for like political change or anything, but just like speeding up the end of the world. It's not like
Yeah.
I
exactly.
want to know how many kids does Matt have? Like, is he doing his part? The Duggars are doing their part.
Yeah, I don't think Matt Iglesias is a part of the Quiverful movement. I don't think JD Vance is either. I mean, nut
Yeah,
up
they
or
need to
shut
start-
up, buddy.
Yeah.
What else we got? I mean, it all ties into the right-wing populist push. I think that is going to be the main thing that we see from the GOP over the next 4 years, leading up to a primary that very well includes Donald John Trump Sr.
Yes, hell yes,
Also,
please, King, come back.
If he runs again, do you think Cruz runs again? Because
No, so here's where I think it would be smart for, if Trump is serious about running again, which I honestly it would just be about vengeance. You know what I mean? And does he want to? Maybe, just to win. But I don't think he wants to be president again.
Oh, hell no.
But he does want to win. And if he does, what he needs to do is control the party for the next 4 years. And the way he does that is if he does right away announce he's running again, and if he does do the bullshit where he's going to do an event during the inauguration, which
he very well might, which you called. It looks like he's currently mulling.
He's floating it.
Yeah.
He's putting it out there. If he does it, he's gonna scare off Cruz, Hawley, Haley, your boy Tom Cotton. They're all young enough. They'll be like, oh, okay, we'll just wait 4 years. He'll probably get some like perfunctory never Trumper to challenge him, who will lose. So
Yeah.
I can see
it would
Romney
be smart of
coming
him
back.
to just keep control of the party for 4 years.
Romney's going to be the 2028 Democratic nominee.
Yeah, no fucking kidding.
Oh, that's
I definitely think that is a possibility. I do see another reality where we just continue to be gaslit by Republicans, and as soon as Trump is out of office, they're going to be like, no, my God, we never supported him. We just wanted to make sure we had a free and fair election. We never liked him, and I see them making the media rounds and trying to distance themselves from him as much as they can, leading up to the 2024 election. Honestly, I kind of just hope Trump is dead in the next couple of years, and we can just not worry about it. Because
the dream scenario.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when you think about it, that is the dream scenario.
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, him running again could completely throw a wrench in the long-term Republican plan, right? Like,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
it could ultimately be a good thing if this motherfucker runs for president again, because I'm
Agreed.
pretty well convinced at this point. I mean, obviously, there's no track record to base this on yet as far as the Biden administration, but judging by the people he's putting in his cabinet, we are likely headed towards a bungled recession recovery, if not just...
No, he's going to whiff it.
He's not going to... Who knows what the fuck's going to happen with COVID? I mean, he's already using the same kind of like bullshit language that Republicans were using, where it's like, we're not going to shut down the country, Jack. We're going to shut down the virus. You know, like...
We're not fighting each other. We're at war with the virus. Like, what the fuck does that even mean, Joe?
He's just going to do platitudes for 4 years.
It's just his Twitter timeline is just an endless stream of platitudes. There's no like policy in there, and then the West exec and BlackRock fucking people that he's putting into the cabinet are all likely going to just continue the project of gutting the public commons for private corporations and shit. And you're going to likely see a right-wing populist backlash in 2022 where the Dems lose the Senate permanently, because there are way more Dems up for election in 2022 than there are Republicans, so they have more seats to lose. And then the thinnest House majority margin since World War II is likely to collapse as well, along the lines of like 94 or 2010.
Right.
So if it comes to 2024 and then you've got a completely and utterly divided government where the Biden administration has been unable to get anything done for 2 years straight, they're going to be very vulnerable incumbents come 2024. And if it's Trump on the fucking table, then, maybe they win. But if it's somebody like Hawley, Cotton, Cruz, Haley, I don't even know who else is going to be in the mix. I think Scott Walker's finally done for good.
No chance.
Rick Scott, DeSantis, Brian Kemp, any of these motherfuckers who are going to try.
Not Brian Kemp anymore. They hate him. He did not stop the steal. He helped the steal. He took money.
All right.
I really hope they lose these Senate seats just based on
withholding the vote.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Trump, like, he had an interview today with Maria Bartiromo where he was talking about how the machines in Georgia are rigged. They're rigged. Why would you go vote in Georgia as a Republican if you think the machines are rigged? Like, Trump keeps saying that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, bud. John Ossoff's probably helped pay for the recount, so he'd say that.
Somehow Ossoff will find a way to lose even if it's rigged.
No kidding.
I don't have a lot of hope in John Ossoff. He's just a fucking empty suit. I saw somewhere a quote from him from an interview like some time back, maybe whenever he was running for that House seat or whatever in 2018, trying to flip a Republican district. And he was talking about how he was in favor of complete drug decriminalization and national marijuana legislation or legalization. And it's like, dude, just run on that. Just run on the weed part.
Right.
Just run on fucking legal weed. I don't know how people haven't understood this yet. But if you're like nominally like a centrist and you don't have any policy that you're running on, why the fuck aren't you at least just running on like, well, we're going to legalize marijuana and stop putting people in jail for it, unless your political project just includes keeping surplus labor like locked away in prisons, because guess what?
Right.
That's what the neoliberal project, a big part of the neoliberal project is. So I don't know. It just drives me fucking nuts. Like, you've got you're going to bring out 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 new voters if you just say, hell yeah, when I get to DC, I'm going to start voting for legal weed. I'm going to start voting at least desschedule marijuana. You're leaving votes on the table.
The most benefit of the doubt I can give Democrats is that they all live in 1994 in their brains, because so many of them have been there forever. Or in the Reagan era or something, where they still believe that this is not a popular idea and that they will be painted as like trying to push drugs on kids. Steny Hoyer, I think yesterday, said that they're going to vote in I think next week in the House in legalizing marijuana federally, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because it's a popular idea that people want. Like, Republicans in Colorado will not come out against legal weed anymore because it's popular.
Right. It's a war that was won, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Drugs won the war on drugs. all your fucking DARE officers have, closed the garage door with the car running by now.
The Dare Bear's eyes have now gone to X's. I never got the Dare Bear on my desk because I'm not a narc.
Man, I'll tell you what, going to a little tiny rural school like I did for middle school, they all but taught us how to fucking make meth. Like in the late 90s,
Same.
when the meth shit was like really ramped up around here, when Taney County alone was producing as much meth as the state of California, they were like basically teaching us everything we needed and the processes used to make methamphetamines just so that people could narc on their fucking parents.
Right.
That was the project, was you're supposed to like, oh, well, my Uncle Ray does that in the shed behind Mama's house. Fucking nuts, dude.
They did that, and they did the thing where they brought it was like a Camaro or a T or something that they had seized from a drug dealer. And they made it sound like he was some, like just well-connected, member of the cartel. And now I realize that this poor guy was probably just like some low-level, just like weed dealer. Fucking got his car taken when they busted him.
Well, that's, the Springfield DARE officers, DARE is still a program as far as I can tell, because I still see the DARE cars every once in a while out in Springfield.
Seriously?
And they drive Chargers, and they're all in Camaros and Corvette, like, fancy Corvettes and shit. And it's all seized assets. It's all civil asset forfeiture. They're like, you don't even have to be charged with a crime, right? Like, if a cop pulls you over and you have $3,000 in cash in your car, in most jurisdictions, the cops can seize that. They don't even have to arrest you and charge you with a crime. They can just say, well, we were keeping him from going and buying drugs. Like, it's suspicious that he would have that. And that's how, like, huge swaths of at least the anti-drug budget is even built, on top of the fact that we throw, half of most cities' budgets at the police. Like, they're not just looting taxpayer money, they're fucking looting taxpayers directly.
Imagine how big of an L it would be to get pulled over by a cop and he's like, nah, you couldn't have $3,000.
It happens all the fucking time, man. It's nuts.
No, yeah, I think it was John Oliver. I think he's kind of corny, but whatever. He did a really good segment on civil forfeiture, which I had no idea about until a couple years ago. But oh god, I did not know that DARE was still a thing. I think it was. I thought anytime I saw a DARE shirt, it was just like a thrift store badge.
I have a trading card for a DARE officer in my drawer at work. I'll take a picture and send it to you guys.
Of an actual, like the police officer that was in
Yeah. Like, they made, like, just cool things you can trade around the playground, I guess. Like here's the officers, and it's like a dare card. It's like a baseball card, but for cops.
God damn, the 90s were so fucking wild, dude.
Yeah.
Just like utterly bizarre cultural stuff going on.
We were scheduled to have DARE class on 9/11, and they didn't come that day. So
they were
Did
busy
they
searching.
respond,
They were searching the city
Yeah.
for Bin Laden.
yeah, they were searching Alpena, Arkansas for some of the Bin Laden
No,
contact.
this is a real thing that happened in Springfield, and I wish I could find the footage. But like the sheriff was having a press conference on TV and said, "Do not call us anymore and say you found Bin Laden in the city. He is not here." Like I swear that's not a false memory. I swear it happened.
I mean, in the immediate aftermath of that shit, I mean, throughout the entire aughts, I mean, the Islamophobia in this area was just through the fucking roof, man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember. I went to a little church like on Wednesdays with my friends, and one time they had like a whole like, it wasn't a Bible lesson, but you get the idea. A little study session of like how Muslim people would like rape their kids and like just do terrible things to animals, and like literally none of it was true. But yeah, like the Islamophobia in like the early 2000s, especially around here in the Ozarks, was just unreal. Like I didn't, until I was an adult, I didn't realize like truly just like how fucked up it was.
Yeah.
So I taught ESL, where most of my students were from Saudi Arabia, or at least over half, but I didn't teach then. And just the amount of like bigotry that they experienced on a daily basis, just like, no, I mean, there are enough incidents. I'm not saying like every time they walked out the door something horrible happened, but like just that every couple weeks, like some guy would start yelling at one of the women or something like that about their like headscarf. And this would have been like 2012 or something. I can't imagine what that would have been like right after 9/11.
Was it college-age kids?
Yeah. They were all.
Yeah.
I was technically working for MSU. It was a bridge school, but they had to come and learn English before they could go to MSU.
That's MSU. Like accepts a lot of students from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
I had Saudi neighbors for a year, which was great. I loved. Those dudes can party, I'll tell you what.
Yes. My first class was three guys, and I had never taught ESL before. I was just like an English major, but it was an immersion program, and so I just had to speak. They knew no English when it started, but by the end of the semester, they asked me to go to Zahn with them, which is a dance club, so I could interpret and talk to women for them. And I was like, I'm not doing that.
Dude, that was basically the role I played as these couple of guys, because it was two cousins, and the older of them was, well, the way he explained it to me is he was the closest related to the king out of like their group.
Yeah.
So being the closest related to the king of Saud, he was kind of like the patriarch of at least that group of mostly young men. And so they had all of their like group dinners and stuff over there. And so there was like always, and my roommate at the time was like in the international studies program. And so like 99% of her school friends were all just like international students. And so we always had these wild international parties at the house where I would be the only, other than her, who was well-traveled, lived in Uganda, currently lives in Doha, like, who's been all over the world and shit. I was only like dumbass local American Missourian in this house. And I often had to be like, had to spit the game for him, which is hilarious because I got no fucking game. So you want me to be your interpreter, buddy?
That was me.
Yeah,
I'm like, you want me to go to a
number.
dance club with you? Do you know who you're talking to?
Yeah. This was slightly before Zan, but at the time it was like we went to Traffic or
God.
Icon or whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Like, that was my year of clubbing, I guess.
I think I went there once with other teachers, and then we just saw our students everywhere, and we're like, okay, we just got to go next door.
Can't do
We have
this.
to go back to Patton. This is not for us.
Yeah.
It's always horrible when you see your students out and you're drunk.
Yeah, it was always funny to take them to like the bars. I would always go to Finnegan, Patton, Outland, you know, like the more pubby places or the shows or whatever. I was going to house shows all the time too, and I'd take my buddy Abdul along with me, and he would just not be into it. I mean, he would be about like my demeanor standing in the fucking club, you know what I mean? Like, did not want to hear some punk band from fucking Minneapolis playing in some basement in Phelps Grove, and I don't want to be standing at the edge of a fucking dance floor at a club that's like playing DJ Khaled or whatever. So there's some compromises in that friendship.
I actually just remembered a time. There's a place in Springfield called Midnight Rodeo.
Yeah,
which is
the rodeo.
the rodeo. Yeah, they do have
Didn't
a
somebody
booty contest.
get shot there?
What?
Always.
Yeah. Oh,
If
yes, of course.
There's a shooting at a club. Now that traffic's gone too, especially. It's if there's a shooting at a club, it's the rodeo.
Yeah, it's kind of like a cowboy type bar. But I went there like I had friends who wanted to like ironically go, like, oh, let's go to a rodeo. And so I went, and then someone walked up to me and handed me a shot, and she was wearing like a mini skirt. It turned out to be one of my Saudi students who always just like I didn't recognize her because she was just like out to party, because normally she just like dressed extremely conservatively. I was like, who are oh okay. But yeah, that's where my students went.
Taylor, you want to talk about Thanksgiving, the Pilgrims, and
Yes.
Senator Longneck Bitch?
Let's talk about Thanksgiving. Apparently, the Pilgrims are not getting the respect that they deserve, according to Senator Tom Cotton. Like a week and a half ago, he got on the floor of Congress and gave a 15-minute impassioned speech, however, forgetting the true meaning of Thanksgiving. This is important because we are averaging about 1,100 new cases a day of COVID in Arkansas. And you would think he would, encourage people to stay home, be careful, social distance. Of course, he did not do that. He said, this year we ought to be especially thankful for our ancestors, the Pilgrims. Honestly, the Pilgrims are the reason that I'm here, so I'm not thankful for them at all. On their 400th anniversary, sadly, however, there appear to be few commemorations, parades, or festivals to celebrate the Pilgrims this year. And you would think that, once again, because of COVID, that's why we're not having parades, festivals, or commemorations, because there is a deadly fucking pandemic that is ravaging Arkansas right now.
Let me guess. Tom Cotton has another thesis as to why
he does.
I'm taking to the floor of the Senate to get mad that my teacher on the Zoom class has not made my kid make a little paper pilgrim hat.
Yeah. Okay, you know that Tom Cotton, he probably already has one, but it's like a real deal.
If he meant it, he should have been on the floor of the Senate in a little pilgrim hat, little belt buckle shoes. Should have come out in full costume.
Would
Should have
that
gone to
be
Spirit
funny?
Halloween the day before.
Because I think it was last week, he gave another speech for the Georgia Senate runoff, and he was in like this like athletic vest almost, like, and it just had like 2 bumper stickers just like stuck on them. I would love to see him in that outfit with like a full pilgrim hat. personally. But once again, you would think that he would turn it around. How this is running, COVID is running rampant. We don't need to be having, festivals for these dead ass pilgrims who took land that wasn't theirs. But you would be wrong. He continued by saying it was the the revisionist charlatans of the radical left who want to rewrite history. And okay, so you would think, Tom, what are you talking about? Because you sound like a crazy person right now, which he does because he is a crazy person. I dug a little deeper, and with some of his comments, this whole like Thanksgiving bullshit that he is doing is because of his fucking beef this summer with the 1619 project, which he introduced a bill into Congress called the Saving American History Act. Because, and to people, I'm sure people do know, but the 1619 project was, 1619 was the year the first slaves were brought over to America, and it's recontextualizing slavery and teaching actual real American history versus, fucking Peanuts Thanksgiving special history that Senator Bitch here seems to be subscribing to. But he was so angry about this that in writing this bill and talking about it, he referred to slavery as a necessary evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just fucking killing it.
That's not the first time he's said that either. That's kind of been his established position throughout this whole thing. I think he's said necessary evil 3 or 4 times. Yeah,
so, okay. I don't understand. Like, okay, we know Tom Cotton is a racist. Like, we know that. He flirts a lot with a lot of, like, kind of alt-right bullshit. Won't, like, outright just come out and say, 14 words or whatever. But, man, how do you, I just have a hard time wrapping my head around somebody who is, he loves to remind us that he is, like, fucking Harvard law educated. How are you like, man, you know what is, like, a hot and good take? Slavery is a necessary evil.
Well, I don't get it. He's a neo-Confederate, right? Like,
yeah,
he's a quiet one. He's no Strom Thurmond in the Senate or anything, but the motherfucker's a neo-Confederate.
That's true, yes. But
nobody uses that phrase. Nobody uses that phrase, slavery, especially with reference to American chattel slavery. Maybe the absolute most brutal iteration of slavery in the modern human period. Like, nobody refers to that as a necessary evil unless they're a fucking neo-Confederate.
Mm-hmm.
I'll die on this hill. I mean,
if
absolutely.
You know that that's as far as you can go in saying what you believe, you know what I mean? Like, that is how he can justify it without having to say, yeah, it was kind of good.
I mean, the natural extension is, like, if it was necessary at one time, then it could and may well be necessary again in the future.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think my favorite thing from this whole just, like, dumb funny to me, Tom Cotton embarrassing himself on the internet, as he is wont to do, is he called, I don't know why, this is so funny landing at Plymouth Rock, called the story a myth and a caricature in the food section, no less. Maybe the politically called the story, which the story of the Pilgrims landing at Plymouth Rock, called the story a myth and a caricature in the food section, no less.
The New York Times fake pumpkin pie recipe.
Man, Jesus. What a fucking dork, dude. I want you to talk shit on Tom Cotton.
Actually, We need Section 239. I don't know what that means. I just know that the tech lords are trying to stop you from stopping the truth from getting out.
Yeah, we need Hawley to protect you from censorship talking shit on cotton.
Actually, Hawley should want you to do that, though, because it will stop his future rival.
So where were we at? One thing we haven't talked about when we've talked about Tom Cotton, as we have several times on this program, is how fucking funny it is that he has like the comic book villain naming convention for a neo-Confederate. The motherfucker's last name is literally Cotton, and he's talking about slavery.
I know.
Being necessary evil.
God, we have that has been a much discussed topic with me, and I feel like a lot of people in Arkansas. I don't want to say it's hilarious because it's fucked up, but like to be honest, it is a little funny. If we're being honest. God, he is just truly, honest to God, the fucking worst. The only one, or not the only good thing, but one good thing about Trump losing, and there are many, is the fact that Tom Cotton will not get a spot in his cabinet, which I think we were hurtling towards that reality.
Oh,
well, Hawley was on his short list of SCOTUS nominees.
What?
Jesus
I think
Christ!
Yeah. So back, man, right before. So this never got talked about much. I don't feel like, but
Ted
like,
Cruz is on that one too,
less
right?
than a
Is it
week-
that same list?
I think so. Yeah, like less than a week, hell, days, just a couple of days before RBG died. Trump just held this impromptu press conference, where he started talking about all of his SCOTUS picks, which included Amy Coney Barrett. I'm going to say ACB because I think it's hilarious how much some libs get upset by.
I mean, look, there are certain ways to actually trigger the libs, and that is one.
Yeah,
They have done
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
calling her ACB. It's so fucking funny. But she was kind of the top of the list, and then he mentioned Hawley. I think he mentioned Cruz. He named off like 20 people, but Hawley was close to the top of the list as far as the male nominees go. So I don't know that we probably dodged a bullet there.
Yeah.
And that was also probably Trump trying to get rid of a future rival by putting him on the court.
Yeah.
Oh
His
wait,
third
no,
term.
Thinking about how that actually makes him an explicit rival by giving him more direct power to check him, but whatever.
I'm actually looking at this. Tom Cotton was on there too, because he put out a press release. Senator Cotton honored to be on Supreme Court list.
Future Supreme Court Justice James Woods on the list. Future Supreme Court Justice Ted Nugent.
Rudy
on the list.
Giuliani.
I mean,
Greg Gutfeld.
Hawley makes a bit of sense because he was a clerk on the Supreme Court.
He was
for
Roberts, right?
For Roberts. Yeah, I think it was Roberts. Yeah. So I mean, he at least makes some sense. It's terrible. I fucking hate it, but
Yeah.
there's some logic to that. I don't know what the logic is about Ted Cruz or Tom Cotton, other than them just being both toadies and potential long-term
Right.
rivals.
I think he just wanted to give them. That's a pat on the head to them for being such loyal Trump guys,
Right.
despite him shitting on them. Not Cotton really, but Cruz.
Yeah. Cruz
Right.
especially. Yeah.
I want someone to nominate that guy who punched Rand Paul for the Supreme Court.
When I am president, he's getting some kind of recess appointment to something.
Yes. But yeah, honestly,
When RBG died, when RBG died, I was talking to my parents and I said, "Here's exactly what's going to happen. They are going to ram someone through before the election." And they said, "No, that won't happen." You know what I mean? Like, no, I'm right about everything all the
Right.
time. I know how these people work. And And they quickly went from saying, no, we would not support that, to this Amy Coney Barrett. She's really bright.
Oh God, I bet your
I'm sure your
dad just loves her.
Oh my God.
I'm sure your dad had very strong opinions about the Catholics up until about
Denies it now.
2 months ago.
Yes, I said my entire life I believed that Catholics were going to hell. That's what they prayed to Mary, and they're like, well, they do pray to Mary, but we never taught you that, motherfucker. Then why do I believe it? Why? Still to this day, believe that Catholics are going
You
to hell.
must have picked that up at the Republican headquarters, Josh.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's so funny that like Catholics control the Supreme Court. it's whenever the religious right in this country is largely powered by, Falwell, Hagee, Billy Graham, those motherfuckers, Pat Robertson. Like, it's the religious right in this country is largely perceived, at least, to be pushed by the evangelical Protestant Christians, and one of their biggest fights is on the Supreme Court, and yet they've all chosen Catholics like across the board to, I guess, because of the abortion thing, like.
At the same time, though,
it's even more a crisis of faith.
Aren't American Catholics are basically Protestant evangelicals? Like Coney Barrett speaks in tongues
in some ways.
You know what I mean? Like has the gift of tongues.
Wait, I must
but
have
Spirit
missed
speaks
that.
through her, Joshua.
Did you see all of the people the other day saying, like all of the American Catholics are like, the Pope does not speak for us? Like, you do not get to pick and choose just because he's against the death penalty or says America first is bad. Yeah.
Right. What was? I don't know. They hate Francis. They loved Benedict, but Benedict never reversed the.
No, if you used to be a Nazi, we love you.
The encyclicals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, what about we got anything else on this fucking cartoon motherfucker Tom Cotton and his I think it's interesting, like he's managed to fuse his beef with the 1619 Project, which is really just like a long existing I guess I don't really know what you define as revisionist history, like this the ML interpretation of revisionist history is like the capitalists changing history to reflect good things about capital or whatever. But I don't know. I don't think revisionist history is a useful term in any way because it carries negative connotations whenever history is constantly revised. Like that's what the discipline of history is
my brother
constantly uncovering.
My brother's
go ahead.
His master's degree is in history, and what he says is all history is revisionist. Like it's all just reevaluating things from the past and finding new things that happened or looking.
Right. What's the point of scholarship in any era if you're not looking for new information?
Right.
Yeah.
But the Republicans and the right generally have had I've been pissed for years, decades, really, about shit like people's history, about like Zen.
Donald Trump tweeting about Howard Zinn was the funniest thing ever.
It was the most, it's the most surreal, man. Like that was a real through the looking glass moment. This motherfucker talking about Howard Zinn.
That was a Dan Scavino tweet for sure.
They've been mad about that shit for decades, calling it revisionist history and all. So he's managed to take that old culture war thing and synthesize it with the more recent culture war thing of the war on Christmas and turn it into this war on Thanksgiving. It's like Christmas keeps coming earlier and earlier every year, and so now does the war on Christmas keep coming?
I will say, guess what? We're not going to do a war on Halloween, motherfuckers. We love it. That's our holiday. We will do a war on Hallelujah Night, the Christmas or the Christian version of Halloween.
That is,
and our war room is going to be in a hell house.
So I've been struggling to put together a topic this week. Like I was struggling for all week, and this, like we had a long weekend, and like I said, I worked a bunch Monday and Tuesday, and ended up only having to go in for like a couple of hours on Wednesday to get to like 40 with my holiday hours. So I just thought, oh man, I had this long weekend. I'm gonna get caught up on all this shit. I'm gonna be super prepared for Sunday record. I'm gonna be prepared for our thing going on next week. I'm gonna have my bonus content done by the end of Sunday. And I just like fucking last night I was just like tearing my hair out between like 5 different topics that I couldn't choose. There's like so many concurrent crises, and like I want to talk about all of them all the time, but it also just like spins me out to do that, to like start digging into it. And I decided this week I'm going to do something not doomerish, I guess. Because I mean, I don't know. I was thinking about the Biden cabinet, the ongoing delegitimization of the election system, fucking COVID in jails, like locally, because the corrections officer just died at the Greene County jail. Evictions, I don't know. You fucking name it. Like any of those, I've got notes going on all of those subjects, and this week I just kind of abandoned all that.
Not being a doomer, you say, as you list all these things.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I say
You're
that
doing great, Pat.
so it's only 1 minute out of my 20 or whatever. So it's all bad. Hey, I don't even think I mentioned climate. Which is the one thing I want to talk about every fucking week. I just wanted to get on here and scream for fucking 20 minutes about the climate crisis. But I'm not going to do that today explicitly. I'm going to talk about something kind of tangentially leading up to it. And I have been thinking like all week about Harvey's essay on the Patreon. It's kind of a lead into a series she started on death and ritual in the Ozarks. And so like, if you haven't had a chance to read it yet, I unlocked it for everybody at the patreon.com/hootnhollerpod. You should check it out if you're listening to this, because it's pretty good. And she decided to start, like, if she wanted to talk about death and burial in the Ozarks, like if you're going to put a body in the ground, you got to dig in the dirt, and the dirt around here is hard to dig through. And so her first essay was just like going through geologic time to talk about why it's hard to dig through the dirt here, and just about like the billions of years that got us to our shitty limestone and sandstone filled regolith that we call soil around here. So thinking about that, and about the natural forces interacting and pushing and pulling and rising and ebbing over time, also got me thinking about, and this is going to be a little bit of a teaser, I won't say too much about it, okay? But we've got next week a very special guest is going to be joining us, and I don't want, like I said, spoil it, but we're going to be talking about big economic and political forces interacting, pushing, pulling, rising, ebbing, and that also really strongly correlates to what's in the ground because of like resources, right? Like be it coal, oil, whatever. I mean, that's a huge economic driver of the last few hundred years, and it's really shaped the world that we lived in. And if you want to talk about politics in any meaningful way, you have to approach the economy that way. So keeping those two things in mind, I started thinking about that in relationships to the Ozarks and what we've pulled out of the ground. Because we've talked some about like the similarities to Appalachia here, both geographically and culturally, and there are a lot of similarities to draw, but one of the main differences is that Missouri and Arkansas have almost no coal. There's some coal in Missouri, but it was never mined extensively like Appalachia was. Mining to Appalachia is like central to its identity for the last couple hundred years, whereas that's not the same. You can't say the same about Missouri as far as like its identity, but it has been central to its economy. We just don't mine coal. So what we do mine is a substance that's been historically used extensively in war, in art, construction, food preparation, fuel production, and plumbing, of all things, for thousands of years. It's also a substance that is highly toxic. It's extremely dangerous to pull out of the earth. It's deadly to process and refine, and has caused untold damage to humankind, even in the modern era. You guys want to guess what it is?
I know the answer already.
It's
Yeah, we do. We do know.
You do know the answer already. It's lead.
Yeah.
It's lead. It's lead. Did y'all know that 90% of the United States lead production happens in Missouri? 90%.
I had no clue.
Yeah.
I didn't either.
I didn't either. I knew that historically that this was a lead mining hotspot, but to this day, it remains the lead mining capital of the United States. Almost all of it is concentrated now in what's called the new lead belt, and historically was concentrated in the old lead belt, though it was also in the Tri-State Mining District, which is extreme southeast Kansas, southwest Missouri, around Joplin, and into the Cookson Hills in Oklahoma.
Why don't they call us the lead belt?
But we are the lead belt.
They should call us
I mean,
that.
the lead
Sounds
belt
cool.
specifically. Specifically, the lead belt the old lead belt refers to a ring around the St. Francis Mountains, and the new lead belt, where most of the activity is going on today, is just southwest of that.
It sounds better than when they call us the buckle of the Bible belt. I'll say that.
So it's almost all concentrated around the St. Francis Mountains, which are the far eastern edge of the Ozarks. The St. Francis Dome it's a really fascinating piece of geography and geology. It's posited that it's the only land in the Midwest and Mid-South that was never submerged. During most of the Paleozoic, all of where y'all and I live was underwater. Most of Tennessee and Illinois and Indiana, the same. We're all just a part of a big, massive warm inland sea. But the St. Francis stood as a island archipelago kind of in the middle of this sea. And one of the reasons that we know that it was never submerged is because there are no marine fossils. Like, if you've ever been out kicking around rocks in a creek bed or quarry in the Ozarks, you've probably seen abundant evidence that this was once a vast sea. There are crinoid and blastoid and stromatolite fossils everywhere you look, except for in the St. Francis. And I don't want to get too into the weeds here because I'm supposed to be talking about lead, but I don't think we've ever seen this on here, or we've ever said this on here, and it needs to be established that even though every business within 100 miles of me is called Ozark Mountain blank, the Ozarks are not, broadly speaking, mountains. We're a dissected plateau. There's millions and millions of years of silt buildup turned to rock by pressure and time, then worn away by water over hundreds of millions of years into the hills and hollers we all know. And Taylor, down by you've got the Boston Mountains, which are much higher than the Salem Plateau that I live on, and way higher than the Springfield Plateau that Josh lives on, which is very much plateau, less dissected up there.
And Taylor, that's where
the
mighty Boss Tones originated. They came out of those mountains.
Well, so I actually found out it has.
I'm so angry.
It has nothing to do with the city of Boston. The reason that the Boston Mountains are called Boston is because for some reason in like the 19th century, Boston was a colloquialism for something that was hard, for a difficult task. Like that's a real Boston, and crossing the Bostons was such a pain in the ass that they just basically called them pain in the ass mountains. That was pretty interesting. I always assumed it had something to do with, with Massachusetts, or at least with weird geologic naming conventions, like the Mississippian or Pennsylvanian, and maybe there's a Bostonian in there somewhere. But no, it's because they're a big
No.
pain in the butt to drive a fucking wagon across. So.
And our cultural legacy is of people who have a lot of quit in them. So.
So, but those aren't even mountains. We call them mountains because they stand so much higher than most of the rest of the plateau, but it just was because of a little bit of uplift related to the Ouachitas to the south, and just because the silt piled up higher there for some reason and just dissected further. There's not really uplift or volcanic activity that caused them, which is how you typically get like a mountain, right? But the St. Francis is different. It's volcanic activity back from the Precambrian era, over 1 billion years ago, and it caused these uplifts, which means that all the rock there is igneous, and it's some of the oldest igneous rock exposed in North America, which is very, very old. There are some parts of the crust exposed up in Canada and down in Mexico, and even out in California, which are over 3 billion years old, but that's like original Earth's crust kind of shit. These are igneous rocks which were formed after Earth became a planet, not during the amassing of stardust into a giant solid ball.
There's a lot of denial of creationism going on this podcast right now. And
Yeah.
I'm very uncomfortable.
It's all theoretical.
Man, know where you're going during Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames.
Listen, it's all theory. Okay, experts say. So you've got this pile of rocks that are extremely old, and they're just chock full of mineral deposits. Like the rest of the Ozarks are pretty mineral laden, because they're underlaid by a formation called the Spavinaw terrane, which is slightly younger than the rocks that make up the St. Francis, but it has a very similar profile. And that's why you have places like Galena, Missouri, and Zinc, Arkansas, and Lead Hill, Arkansas, that are down in my neck of the woods, and Galena, Kansas, over in the tri-state mining district. But the St. Francis it's built different, and it caught the eye of European settlers very, very early from mining prospects. So around 1717, I'm gonna fuck this up because I'm just gonna Ozarks this French name and all the French names after this, because that's how we do. Like, for the record, St. Francis Mountains is spelled Saint Francois, but we say it St. Francis, just like we call Versailles, Missouri, Versailles, and we call it Bodark, and all the other good Anglicizations or Ozarkianations of the French language. Fuck around and find out, Frenchies. Okay, so in 1717, Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, namesake of the luxury vehicle brand, founder of Detroit, settler colonialist extraordinaire, and then future governor general of French Louisiana Territory, was hanging out in Illinois Territory, and he went out exploring on this side of the Mississippi River, right at the eastern edge of the Ozarks, when he stumbled ass first into a bunch of lead in what is now Madison County, Missouri. So he immediately formed a mining company and named the mine after himself, Mine Lamotte. I don't really understand, because his name is spelled De La Mothe, like M-O-T-H-E, and the mine is called Mine Lamotte, M-O-T-T-E. I don't really understand that, but it's named after himself. But they handed over management to a guy named Philip Francois Renault, which was a metallurgist. He was an explorer, and he was a really close personal buddy of Louis XV. So Renault takes over this mine, and he immediately brings in 200 French settlers from Saint-Domingue. That one I totally butchered, but it was basically the French colony that became modern-day Haiti. And of course, those 200 French settlers brought along their slaves. So it's 1717. It's almost a full 20 years before the founding of St. Genevieve, Missouri, which is the oldest continuously inhabited city west of the Mississippi. It's a city that was actually founded because it turns out that when you mine in the middle of nowhere, you need yourself some way to send all this heavy ass metal that you're pulling out of the ground to the places where people live and can use it. So eventually they founded St. Genevieve as a port on the Mississippi River in order to largely because of the lead and also like the corn and stuff that they were growing to support the lead. They figured out that they could grow a lot of corn up here, and so they sent that shit downriver to New Orleans too. But you have like 200 French colonists. You have an unknown number of their slaves. I tried looking that up in all the sources, and nobody mentions how many slaves. You would assume that that some of those French colonists were very wealthy and had a bunch of slaves, and some of them were probably just dirt poor workers. But again, I mean, that 1717 is so fucking long ago in North American history that it is very hard to find reliable sources about a mining company that came up at that time in the middle of fucking nowhere, because this is the utter frontier. Like, this is going on before Appalachia is settled in the 1730s or whatever, you know. So you've got all these folks out in the middle of nowhere in eastern Missouri, and they're mining and milling an extremely toxic material out of the ground. They're far, far away from any established European city, and they're quite a ways from even the nearest fort or settlement, which would have been up in Illinois country, in Illinois territory. It's probably both the earliest instance of mining in the interior of North America, or at least by Europeans, and also very probably the first instance of the use of transatlantic slave labor west of the Mississippi. The only other thing, I mean, there were slaves involved in the founding and building of Detroit, which is east of the Mississippi, but that's the only like major slave holding operation that I can find west of the Appalachians this early, because Detroit was founded in like 1701. So, and it was basically Canada back then, you know, like out of what became America, Detroit is really the only thing that beats Mine Lamont on that front. So I thought that was pretty interesting, you know, like make a big deal in 5th grade Missouri history about the Missouri Compromise and Henry Clay and all that shit, and us being a slave-holding border state during the Civil War. But it's really curious to learn that the first slaves, this is like the 1717 project, you know.
Yeah, Josh Hawley's coming for you.
The corrupt editors of the Harrison Daily Times.
So, lead is a pretty useful substance, right? Like, it's obviously, we know about it now. In 2020, we view it mostly as like a fucking toxic thing, right? But it's a very useful substance. It's got a low boiling point, or it's got a low melting point. It's extremely corrosion resistant, especially for like pre-industrial metals before we started figuring out aluminum and titanium and all that shit. It's soft, easy to work. It's very dense. It doesn't need to be alloyed for many uses. We've been using lead for about 6,000 years at least, and the Egyptians were probably the first to use it, making small little lead figurines. The Greeks use it to make pigments for paint and pottery glazes. In fact, we've known how dangerous it is for thousands of years because the process the Greeks used to make lead, to make white lead, led to some absolutely grotesque deaths among some of the workers tasked with scraping and washing and grinding the white lead. I mean, apoxia, hypoxia, a bunch of other medical terms that I know neither the definition of or how to pronounce, killing off people in their 20s because they spent six years or whatever working in the lead fields in Greece. So we've known that it's toxic for 4,000 years or some shit. But we used it well into the 20th century for things like lining water pipes, roofing houses, added durability to house paint that you put on the walls in next to your baby's crib. And we even used it for a while as an artificial sugar substitute. So that's pretty cool.
What?
Yeah, there's a lead acetate compound that still has all the toxic effects of lead, but it is very sweet. And so in the early attempts to make chemical substitutions for sugar, they would often throw in a little bit of lead sugar, which had some pretty grotesque results. So back in 1717, they would have been turning lead into all kinds of things. The gutters, roofs, they coated the hulls of ships with it to protect that and keep it from rotting. Trinkets, tools, but most importantly, in 1717, you'd probably be turning it into lead shot, as in bullets. This is a huge part of the demand of the mineral all the way through and up and beyond the Civil War. And Union and Confederate forces actually fought over mines, mills, and smelters at Fredericktown, Missouri, not far from Lamont, as a major strategic asset for the western frontier of the war. So just from this one use alone, war, and even just in one war, lead far and away, drawn primarily from the Missouri ground, is responsible for the death of almost 750,000 people. And that's not including what happened in the 20th century. You guys ever heard of a little outfit called the National Lead Company?
I'm here. I think he dropped out.
Okay.
No?
God, it wasn't us fools, Josh.
I'll talk about what I know about lead now. Also.
Oh shit! Did I lose you guys?
I got nothing.
One time, they thought that there was lead in the drinking water in Alpena at high school because some girl was doing a science fair project and thought she found a bunch of lead, but it turns out she didn't do the test right. And we were
Was it
fine.
one of those? Did at your school when you went back on Monday morning after a long weekend and drank from the water fountain? Did you just taste rust?
Oh yeah, our school, the high school that I went to, was built by the WPA. So there honestly was some. There was also asbestos in the ag building.
I had a teacher.
So, but yeah, it was a whole deal, and then and then there was people from the state that came and they tested our water and they bought us all bottled water for the week, and then they realized it was fine.
I had a teacher who told us
and they're
never drink
maybe
from
don't.
the fountain on Monday. Let other students do that, and maybe by noon. Okay.
Can you all hear me now?
Yeah. You're back.
My. Yes, we were sharing some lead facts.
Let's see.
Do you know where'd I cut out? Did you hear me talk about the Civil War?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah? No. Yeah, no.
Well, you were talking about 1717.
Yeah.
How, okay. Yeah. I don't even know where I was at. Fuck. Okay, well, here, I'll just pick it up here. Have you all ever heard of a little outfit called the National Lead Company?
Yes.
No.
Yeah? Do you know, Taylor, do you know what they're famous for, among other things?
No, I don't. It's been a minute since American history.
Okay, well, the National Lead Company was a massive corporation. It was one of the first 12 companies to be listed on the Dow Industrial Average whenever it was founded in the late 1800s. And the thing that you are most likely to, as a consumer, be familiar with is one of their products and advertising characters called Dutch Boy, as in Dutch Boy Paints. Does that ring a bell?
I've seen that little motherfucker in his overalls.
Yeah, and his fucking dandy ass
Yes,
hat.
little Lord Fauntleroy.
Yeah, he looks like the fucking that blue boy painting or whatever.
Yeah.
My grandparents had a reproduction of that scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. I swear it was haunted. Okay, so the mine Lamont changed hands bunches and bunches of times over the course of 200 years after Renault and the 1717 project. But for a time, it and several of the other productive mines in both the old lead belt and also in the tri-state district were owned by the National Lead Company. And they did fucking gangbusters. They basically had a monopoly on producing lead bricks. They produced all kinds of lead compounds for various industrial uses. And I think they even had their hand in some commercial like consumer products. But basically they were so good at mining, milling, and refining lead that they needed new markets for it. They had all this lead and no way to sell it. So in 1907, the National Lead Company introduced the Dutch Boy. He's a dandy little character that mostly existed to convince parents and homeowners that despite thousands of years of evidence to the contrary, and fellow paint producer Sherwin Williams' own admission just a few years earlier, that lead is a pretty dangerous thing to be around, he was there to assure you that lead-based paints are both very durable and stylish and totally harmless in the home. So for almost 70 years, Dutch Boy was just loaded with lead. It added durability, it made it dry faster, and there's all kinds of crazy shit from the Dutch Boy commercials and stuff. Like this guy, they targeted at kids. They made like coloring books and radio ads and shit at kids so that kids would go tell mommy and daddy that if they're going to paint the house, they needed to use Dutch Boy. So I don't know. There's not a good place to end this because I really want to talk about, if you want to know what the effects of us putting lead paint all over the inside of our houses for 70 years, and around this time, they also started adding lead to gasoline. And so gasoline was full with leaden materials, which means that the pollution put off by cars was full of lead. You can watch lead rates, like lead blood levels, drop precipitously from 1970, whatever it was, whenever they passed lead legislation, to today, where it's much lower than it was. But I mean, we just had rampant lead, low-level and mid-level lead poisoning in this country for almost 100 years. And that's just all the shit that we have data on. And it was these companies, especially National Lead Company, putting lead into products that did not need lead in it just because they made so much lead that they needed a way to turn it into money because it's cheap, right? So
do you think the low-level lead poisoning that you were talking about, do you think that explains all of our parents' Facebook posts?
Fuck yes.
Like,
I truly do. I honestly...
Is that maybe what's rotting their brain?
I mean, you can look...
I think it's lead plus asbestos. There's a couple other things that are infecting the Facebook post I see from my parents.
Yeah, decades of anti-communist propaganda, American prosperity gospel, you name it. I mean, I think lead was useful in making all of those things prevalent.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the lead is kind of like the vector there, right? Like, it's just, it puts enough holes in your brains that kind of shit can just squeeze through. Yeah.
God, what if they did like a Hillbilly Elegy, but instead of being hooked on pills, J.D. Vance's mom was just like licking lead paint?
I mean, she probably was. Right. He probably grew up eating lead paint chips too. I've lived in several houses in Springfield that almost certainly had lead paint in them, you know? I lived in 3 houses that were built in the 19th century in Springfield, and they were all fucking just traps. None of them were like nice houses or anything. It's not like I was living in a historic Victorian or anything. And they were all just like, you know, it had to have been painted over 10 dozen times with white lead paint to hide the smoke stains and shit.
Blood splatters.
So I don't know. I mean, there's not I'm going to talk about this more because I want to talk about Ozark labor history, just kind of as a long-term topic project for my part of this podcast. And that's tied pretty heavily to this extremely dangerous job, which is pulling lead out of the ground. But there's so much misery in this country and in the world from us using lead in consumer products and unsafely capturing lead in industrial processes that I found it I knew that we produced lead historically. I had a feeling that we produced some lead to this day, but to find out that 90% of the lead production in this country comes out of this state just blew my fucking mind. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. I know I was a little bit scattershot. Like I said, I've just been kind of a fucking mess lately. So this is my attempt to get back on the saddle, I guess.
When you say that it's added misery, I do have to admit that I have added a little bit of misery with lead because I once had a lead pipe and I murdered an old professor of mine called Plum in a study. And I pinned it on some troop named Mustard. So.
Oh, God, John.
Boo! This is the second time I've had to boo in this episode. Boo! Anyways, that's it. That's all I got.
Okay. Well then.
Joshua, you have a new main character for us, huh?
Yes, but I cannot say her name for legal concerns. So I mentioned this last week that we have an extremely litigious person whose name I'm afraid to mention. But I'm going to make the case now that we can mention her name without defaming her, as long as we just say the things she does.
Hell, I might find some clips from her radio show and throw it in this section if I can find anything juicy.
She also has a YouTube channel where I think what ultimately she wants to do is be a reality show, like a Duggar kind of person, because she uses her kids on the channel a lot, which I don't want to make fun of her kids, obviously, but it's bad. It's
Do we
bad.
not, though?
Okay, so this person who keeps suing every city in sight, she used to be on city council. She quit in disgrace, or because everyone was being mean to her, basically. Ran for mayor and lost, and then moved to Nixa. And so she sued the city.
And ran for mayor in Nixa, too?
No,
She ran
not
for
yet.
mayor in Nixa?
That's coming soon.
Okay,
I don't know
not
if they
yet.
have a mayor. Do they? They probably do.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they do.
Or city manager, something. She will run for something, yes. So there is a Facebook page called Citizens Against Her Name Here. And when she sued the city, the person who runs it posted, "She moved all the way to Nixa and is still causing drama in Springfield. Drunk face emoji. Go away, her name. We don't miss you. Quit harassing us." And so she commented on their page, "Hey folks, remember I'm a private citizen now." And then posted a Breitbart article. Funny. But it was, the article was Nicholas Sandman settles $250 million lawsuit with the Washington Post. If you don't remember who he is, he's the kid in the MAGA hat who... there was like a Native American man. He's
elder.
looking smug as hell with all of his like dipshit MAGA little buddies from their private Christian school. Anyway, that kid sucks, and he can sue me for that because I can say it.
He spoke at the RNC.
Yes.
Say whatever the fuck you want about
Yeah,
it.
no, fuck that kid. Anyway, and the person from
Canceled all the way to the top.
It's so easy to grift from on the right. And then the person who runs the page shared a DM she sent a couple years before and said, "I plan a defamation lawsuit when I find out who you are." And then it goes on and on, where at some point she says, this is from 2016, this was when she was still running, and she asked them to change the name of the page because it's Citizens Against Her Name Here. And she says, "I just don't want people to confuse this with the real page." Why would people for you? Anyway. But they still post about her, which is funny. Let's see. Okay, so she claims she's a private citizen, but she keeps suing everyone. She had a press conference that she called the media to.
I can count at least 4 this year. 4 at least 4 press conferences that I'm aware of.
Yes, just including one where a man held an
2.
umbrella over her during the press conference, which
Yeah. I think there was one in Nixa. I think there were 2 in Springfield because I think she sued both the city and then SPS.
Yes.
And then there was one in Branson too.
And she keeps.
And that's an incomplete list. That's just me catching her in the wild, like not looking into it, you know.
The funniest thing about her suing Springfield is the client, because she has to sue, like she is a lawyer. This is why she can be so litigious, because she just does it herself. Her client, she was suing about the mask ordinance, was already had an exemption from it for whatever reason. So it was easy to throw out. Okay, and 2, she claims she's a private citizen. She has a radio show on a radio station in Springfield.
Is this Rudy Giuliani?
That was my next note, is that I'm only surprised that Trump has not hired her to be to release the Kraken with Rudy and Sidney Powell and Jenna Ellis. So, okay. Can we hoot and holler about this private citizen? So,
I mean, my vote's yes. but I want you to keep going. Let's hear all the merits of the merits.
Right. Okay. So this is something that. Okay. So I don't think I troll that much online. Like I'm.
Joshua.
I'm very mean to like actual politicians now, but I used to fight a lot more with just people in comment sections. And and also with other businesses near me. and this is mostly about how I've learned my lesson to stop doing this. So I probably have been in, that I was counting this morning, 4 online feuds with other businesses just because I'm an idiot. And so I thought that this incident is when I swore off doing that, but I see that this is from 2015, and I remember I did get a 1-star review in 2016 after Trump got elected that said the owner of this business called me smooth-brained. Which, not what you want.
Fucking dirtbag left seeping out into the mainstream.
And I don't feel bad about like taking. At the time, I had a business partner. It was before she moved to go to grad school, and look, when I troll, I'll hand up. Yeah, I'll take the consequences of this, but I don't want it to come down on anyone else. So
right.
So I did swear off trolling. I was like, okay, I will stop trolling because someone can just search my name, find the business, and get mad. However, this summer during the Black Lives Matter protests, some of the businesses downtown were trying to bring me back. One of them boarded up their windows because they were afraid of the horrible protesters. I won't name
the 2 protests that happened downtown.
Exactly, but you had to board up the windows
that were fucking kettled on the square anyway.
Exactly. And another place downtown had a no mask policy before the mask ordinance. And I didn't know this, and I walked in, and they shouted at me for wearing a mask. And I was like, but no, not beefing anymore. Okay, so this was in 2015, I guess. I didn't realize exactly when it was. I thought I had stopped trolling after this. There used to be a place downtown called the Bistro Market. And my friend and I were getting coffee, and we were walking back, and she said, take a picture of this sign, and I'll send you a picture of this sign. But it's from their bar area. It's closed now, but they had a bar area, and it says, make her clothes fall off, ! Oh,
I I remember this going around. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And so there is a bra and there are underwear that have clearly fallen off, and it says 250 tequila shots.
Eesh. God.
And so I blame her for this. She said, "Take a picture of this. You have to post this." And so I commented, or I posted it and said, "Bistro Market stepping up to make downtown a little more rapey in the absence of squeeze play." So now I have to explain what squeeze play is. Squeeze play was
I remember.
It was a sports bar, a very short-lived sports bar. Don't think they made it a year, but it was sports bar or squeeze play, bikinis and martinis, and so it was like a Hooters kind of thing, but the women are supposed to serve you in bikinis, which I don't think they did long term. That place shut down pretty quickly.
No, which is now it's now Black Sheep.
It's Black
right?
Sheep, yeah.
Isn't that the same building?
Yep.
Which is like cop boosting burger joint.
Cops eat free. Cops eat free. Again,
Cops
talking
eat
bad about
free.
any places downtown. Want no beef.
I'll talk shit on Black Sheep. Fuck that place. The burgers are kind of trash, and booze and milkshakes is fucking gross.
And also, I have to step over a lot of vomit from that place when I walk into work in the morning. So.
I imagine you eat a fucking 3/4 pound burger and then you drink a fucking 40-inch frozen milk beverage filled to the gills with vodka. Like, you ain't gonna make it.
And they also empty their grease into like the alley where the Outland is. I see them talk about that a lot. Actually, yeah, fuck that place. Never mind. Let's see. So squeeze play. Anyway, they went out quickly, but before when they're on their way out, they got a front page newsletter story claiming that someone was threatening to burn their store down, which absolutely did not happen. I think he was setting up an insurance thing or something. Okay, so me saying that thing about squeeze play, it got shared by one of my friends who so I shared it to just private friends on Facebook because I don't want anyone publicly to see what I'm doing because it's never good. So it wasn't a public post, but one of my friends shared it, and she also had a business downtown, and the newsletter picked it up and wrote a story about it, which
Oh my God.
I remember all of this. I
Yes.
remember seeing this post on Facebook in 2015.
Yeah, it wound up getting shared. I think it was mostly screenshot or whatever, but it got shared around a lot. And so the tequila makes her clothes fall off is from a Joe Nichols country song called "Tequila Makes Her Clothes Fall Off," which I was not familiar with. But also, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Oh, it
You
was
know,
a hit.
saying-
It was a hit. What was that? 20 years? I mean, it's been a long time since that song is out.
I watched the
Like,
video
it
today.
predated
It's an
that
old ass
quite a
video.
bit. Yeah.
But just saying "make
It's
her
a
clothes
trash-ass
fall
song,
off"
too.
as a declarative sentence, ! Is even different than, I don't know. I get. Ugh. Why am I relitigating?
Well, the song is gross, but it is about a person who, through her own agency,
Right.
drinks tequila and then starts to get naked.
Right.
That's just, she drinks tequila and then she gets naked in public. I think we've all known somebody, male, female, etc., that acts like that.
Just
I
wants
used
to get
drink
drunk and then get naked for some
whenever
reason.
I would drink Seagram 7, I would end up fucking naked. That's just, I mean, some people do that. That's different than the declarative of making
Feed
her
her
clothes
these
fall off.
$2.
So
Yeah.
I don't have this reference point.
Yeah, feed her these shots until she fucks you.
So it was written up in the paper based off my private Facebook page, which I was just horrified when the story came out because I was like, oh no, this is not going to go well for me. But then the next morning, again, because I am not a public person, I'm just me.
You say that, but you were just in the newsletter this week too, weren't you?
Okay, yes, I'm circling back to this.
Okay, sorry. Spoiler.
So the next morning, someone that I've written in my notes, the local dipshit Nick Reed. So I would say he's a conservative libertarian who has a morning show on our local right-wing radio station. He replaced, like, he's just kind of like a bland kind of like frat, like he's like eat steak and drink beer and doesn't want the government on him, that kind of guy. He replaced an actual psycho who I will talk about at a later point, who I think actually got fired from the station for challenging the Republican establishment too much because he was talking bad about someone he referred to as, quote, Papa Blunt a lot. He was
Papa Blunt?
He was unhinged. I have some emails back and forth with him that are amazing. But anyway, so Nick Reed read this story, and he devoted an hour of his show to talking like shit about me. And obviously, because he's didn't like call me to like own me, which would have been funny, like if he like reached out, because I would have gone on his show. But I mean, that's not what they really do. They just want to do whatever. So his three main points were, one, that I was extremely mad that I saw this thing. I was just like frothing at the mouth.
Triggered.
Yes. And I don't think they knew the word triggered at the time. That's what I was trying to think. But I think they said...
that was... The snowflake thing was more... But I mean, I feel like triggering snowflakes was kind of contemporaneous to that. It would have been around the time that trigger became like a fucking buzzword. That I don't know if it was there yet, but it was definitely in that era.
I tried to go back and find the audio from it, and I wish I had saved it, but it's not on the Nick Reed podcast. I guess they save them every day. But it doesn't go back that far, unfortunately, because it was... I mean, that's the kind of thing I live for. It's just like conservatives like being mean about me specifically. Like, so that was his first point. Is just that I was so upset, obviously, that I saw this thing and I was like shaking in rage. Two, that I'm clearly a snowflake that was raised in a safe space by liberal parents, and I've never had to deal with any idea in my bubble, kind of thing. Which a huge swing and a miss from you there, Nick.
That famous thing that happens all over the Ozarks.
Right, exactly. Just
the fucking phenomenon of a liberal bubble. Oh, God.
I'm the Ozarks Dutch boy. I'm the little Lord Fauntleroy of the Ozarks, and no one is ever allowed to say anything bad about me, or my liberal parents come and hit them with gloves in the face or something and challenge them to a duel. And then my last thing, which I thought was really funny that he said, was, well, if we're just making generalizations about businesses, his store's called Bookmarks. Let's just say he's a Marxist then.
Oh, no. Owned. You've been owned.
Like, this guy has done no research. Like, he read the article. Like, that's all the prep he does for his show is, like, flips through what he calls, quote, the fish wrapper, because he's hilarious and original. And... like, all he had to do was, like, Google the store, and he would actually see Karl Marx on the sign.
Karl Marx is the fucking logo. It's spelled with the X.
I think that's where he, like, at least added that much up. He's like, we could just say this. And he took calls, and just getting random callers to to talk about me is hilarious.
So was our subject one of the callers?
No. So I listened to this and I wanted to like defend myself, but I decided mostly because no, like that
finally I have a platform to defend myself against the right-wing talk radio.
This is mostly me just to want to come up with a reason that I can talk shit about a name that you would have to bleep if I said it.
Say it. I'll bleep it.
So I did look her up, and much like our last...
Yeah, Curtis I'm not afraid of. He can't afford a lawyer.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't remember if we said Curtis's name or not. Much like Curtis, we have the same two friends in common. With Curtis Montgomery Jr.
See, I was thinking like this week about trying to dunk on Curtis some because he's like on Twitter quite a bit.
Oh, he's on Twitter. I haven't even seen his Twitter.
Yeah, he's on Twitter. He doesn't post very much on Twitter as apparently he does on Facebook. He's like one of those guys that just like logs in once every month and, you know, like types in a stupid ass tweet about a fucking Vanderbilt football game or something, you know.
He's an honorary boomer.
Oh,
because he's
God.
always on Facebook.
But so I really think our growth strategy should be to get Brian Seitz or Curtis Montgomery or somebody like that to hire who I believe we have every fucking right to talk about in the public sphere because she's a goddamn radio host. I don't care if she's a public servant or not. She's a public fucking person. We're not talking about her personal life. We're talking about her public activities. That's where I stand.
Any
on
judge
it.
would laugh her out of court and also wink at us as well. Be like, "Thank you. I do not like this lady."
So yeah, I mean, I think our growth strategy
Imagining us-
should be to get sued in some LOL suit by fucking on behalf of Curtis Montgomery or Brian Seitz or hell herself. Fuck her. I'm not bleeping her name.
Okay,
Fuck
hell
it.
yeah.
I don't care how litigious she is. All we've talked about is her public activities, which includes her being fucking litigious as hell on goofy ass lawsuits that almost never go anywhere. And that's my stance on it. She was a shit city council person, and I think it was fucking hilarious whenever she ran for mayor and got like 20% of the vote.
I think Curtis got more of the vote than she got. Like,
she was in that class with Justin Burnett too.
Yeah.
In the post Soji, anti-gay, anti-trans city council.
A really weird
class
backlash that we had.
Yeah. To maybe you shouldn't be able to be kicked out of your house for being for identifying how you identify or loving who you
And
love.
Springfield's
and
like, oh
decided
no.
to,
We
go to war about that shit.
What about
Yeah.
freedom? James River.
It's about my freedom to evict homosexuals from their houses.
Across the street from where I lived at the time, because I lived by BBC, they had up one of those.
That's Bible Baptist.
Yeah,
College,
Baptist.
not
Yeah,
the,
Baptist Bible
British
College. Sorry.
broadcast.
They had like a sad little girl standing in front of a bathroom, and it said like, "Men in my bathroom now," or something like just the shit that James River was doing. Terrible, just awful people.
And the Soji shit really didn't touch bathrooms hardly at all.
It's about housing
it
and
require you to have like an ungendered bathroom. If you had public bathrooms, you had to have one that was ungendered, which does not mean a big Walmart size bathroom where anybody can walk in. It just means a door with a fucking lock on it and a toilet that anybody can put their ass cheeks on. But it was more about housing and employment and banning people from firing or evicting people solely because they are because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. And of course that being 2015.
that sounds
That was 2015,
right.
not
I
long
have to look
after
it
my
up.
son was born. I mean, municipals in Springfield are odd years, and it was after the boy was born, so it had to have been
15 sounds right because it was
13 or
before.
15.
Because I have been to two things that were supposed to be victory parties at the old glass place downtown. One was the one for that, and one was 2016 for Hillary. And I was like, I'm never entering this building again. This building is cursed. Okay, so I decided to try diplomacy. So I emailed Nick Reed and said, just to clarify, I did not talk to the news leader about the sign at the Bistro Market. A news leader reporter took a screenshot of a joke I made on my personal Facebook page comparing Bistro Market's degradation of women to squeeze play and wrote a story about it, but I was never spoken to about it. Both your and the newsletter's characterization of me as frothy mouth offended is inaccurate. My sole intention with the photo is to say, oh, here's something dumb I saw. It blowing up and becoming a news story is insane to me. But if you know anyone in the media who has any interest in any other stories based on my Instagram feed, I have many cute pictures of my cat on there. And he responded,
well played.
Thanks for the info. I will mention on air tomorrow. I will also let people know about your cat. Guess what? He did not mention on the air tomorrow. Because of course he's full of shit. But that's me just trying to be like, hey. And I mean, part of, like, I do think the sign was kind of horrible, but it mostly was me just being like, hey, look at this stupid shit. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't, like, shaking in rage, so that annoyed me. So my conclusion, am I a public person? Probably. Even though 90% of the time when someone tries to interview me, I say, oh, no, please go find someone else. I do not want to be on camera. Because I can't watch myself. And I just, like, start shaking. However, I did
Buddy, I have to fucking edit this podcast every week. And the weeks that I'm on it, it's just like, it's so much easier to edit it whenever Harvey's on it than it is when I'm on it. Because I'm just yeah, I feel
yeah.
There's a physiological response to it.
I did something, I probably shouldn't say this, but it's funny, so I'm going to say it. So sorry to this reporter. I only did the interview because she was, like, on a deadline and all of her other people had fallen through and it was going to be on camera. And I was like, I'm just so bad at this. I am afraid of cameras. And I said, I'm sorry I gave you nothing. And she said, what I always tell people is if I can make Sheriff Jim Arnott look good, I'll make you look good. So if you don't know who our dipshit sheriff is, that's a good line.
Yeah, that's you're going to have to tell me who that was after this, because I want to know who that was who said that.
I actually probably don't even know, because I didn't know her at all, but...
Well, you have to tell me who she was.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, well, I don't think I'm a public person. I think my cat Googey is 1,000,000% a public person, because people bring him stuff. So here's my verdict. Either we can talk shit about and she's a public person, or I'm going to retroactively sue KSGF for defaming me, and they will not have to pay us money, but they will have to settle and let Hoot and Holler have 2 hours a day to replace Mark Levin on the air.
Oh, shit. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's infiltrate right-wing radio in the Ozarks. Let's do it. A fucking 2-hour daily show is better than the way I spend my days now. Let's do it.
So if this is up to you, you can take our case to help us sue KSGF. So either I can make fun of you for posting pictures on a riding lawnmower in your business attire, which you are clearly not mowing that lawn, or we get the Levin hours. That's it. Yeah.
When let's go ahead and plug her radio show. When
let's plug her Parlor. I bet she's on. Racist Elf is gonna find her on Parlor. I bet she follows back.
I'm surprised she hasn't found Racist Elf yet. Well, I think we've got. I don't know how much we've got minus the couple of cutouts, but hey, at least we're consistent, folks. It's fine. It's fine. I don't want to be a professional anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Who would?
Yeah.
I learned at a young age that if you it took too long to learn this. I guess I didn't learn this until I was in my late teenage years. As you don't set you don't set the bar too high, and then whenever you soar past it, you look fucking great, and whenever you barely meet it, you're just fine. But if you set the bar real high, then if we had great production values, if we had that nice, warm, rich, deep Roman Mars tone at the top, then this would all be a shit show all the time. But instead, we're just 4 fucking dumbasses with our own little weekly radio show that all of about 75 people listen to, and apparently some of them enjoy it. So we really thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you.
We'll talk about this off air, but I do want to start inviting a few people locally onto the pod. So once we figure out our sea legs next week, again, the little teaser there. I don't know. We got anything else, folks? All right. Well, we'll see y'all next week.
Folks, thanks for joining us for another episode of Hoot and Holler. If you like what you hear, there are a number of ways you can support us. You can tell a friend. You could rate, review, subscribe, etc. on the podcatcher of your choice. iTunes helps a lot there. And if you really like what you hear and you want to hear more, you can head on over to patreon.com/hootinhollerpod. We have monthly bonus episodes and weekly bonus content available starting at just $1 a month. You can find us on social media, where we keep all the bad takes and hot clips, by searching for Hoot and Holler Pod. And finally, folks, we are still looking for stories about the 2006 Wilco show at the Shrine Mosque in downtown Springfield, Missouri. If you're there, have any fond memories or otherwise, we want to hear about it. We'll kind of tie together an oral history of what was a pretty infamous night in both alt country history and Springfield music history. Take an audio or text. Drop me a line at hootnhollerpod@gmail.com. If you want to get on the horn and talk about it, if you prefer that, it's whatever, man. Just holler at me. I want to hear about it. We got some cool stuff so far. And the music this week is a tune borrowed from the very good, very cool Max Hunter folk song collection at Missouri State University. Fellow went around with, I would guess, like a suitcase wire recorder in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and recorded a bunch of the old timers singing the old songs. So this week I borrowed a little outlaw tune from him called Cole Younger. It's number 699 in the catalog, and it was sung by Virgil Lance in Mountain Home, Arkansas on April 15th, 1969. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks for stopping through.
I am a bold highwayman, Cole Younger is my name. My many depredations had brought my friends to shame. Robbing of an old field bank of which Brother Bob did say, "Oh, Cole, when we undertake that job, we'll surely curse the day." There are no bolder robberies than the ones of which I tell. California miner with whom our lot befell. We robbed him of his money, boys, and bid him go his way, of which we shall be sorry until our dying day. We robbed the Union Depot, the freight and supplies. Bloody records of our deeds brought tears into our eyes. The fireman engineerman was killed, the conductor escaped with his life, and now their bodies lie moldering beneath Nebraska skies. Then we mounted our horses, then we started for Texas, that good old Lone Star State. Out on Nebraska prairies, the James boys we did meet. With guns, knives, revolvers, we all sat down to play, while drinking of good whiskey to pass the time away. Then we mounted our horses and northward we did go, to that God-forgotten country called Minnesota. We rode them all our father's death and tried to win the prize, and fight those anti-guerrilla boys until the day we died. Right there we stationed our pickets and into the bank did go. 'Twas there upon the counter we struck the fatal blow, saying, "Hand over your money, boys, without any further delay, for we're the notorious younger boys and got no time to play."